Hello and welcome to today's episode. I have got a real special treat for you today. I've got Matt here and he's going to be talking to me about what he does for a living. So, Matt, hello.
Hi, it's lovely to be here.
Oh,
Um,
it's lovely to
no,
have you. Would you like to
thank-
introduce yourself?
yes, my name's Matt, and I'm known as Male Doula. I'm definitely not the only one out there, but that's a name I've kind of taken, and it's settled in really well. Um, and yeah, I've been doing doula work for about almost 5 years now. Just before that, I trained to be a fascial release practitioner or a Bowen therapist. So the two kind of combined themselves together on my birth journey. So yeah, it's been a long journey to get here, but I'm not regretting a single moment of it. It's definitely was my calling to be in that birth room and helping out all these lovely people.
When did you first hear the word doula?
It's it's quite funny now you say that. I think I had the reaction that most people have when they hear the doula. They try and pronounce it. They go do what? Um, and you have to kind of really simplify what the word doula means. Officially, it's a woman that supports someone during birth. But I've kind of knocked that out the dictionary a little bit, in that I've put the masculine side to it, and it's worked. But the first time I heard it was there was a lady coming to see me who she was only about 16 weeks pregnant at the time, and she was having some lower back pain, and I was doing my fascial release treatment to ease that pain. And she said, "Oh, like, do you think this treatment would actually be any good in the birth room?" And I'd already done an extra little bit of coursework and training for the Bowen therapy that I was doing that revolved around pregnancy and birth and postnatal care. So I was like, yeah, it would be really good. And I know the theory of it. I've done the hands-on work on people that weren't pregnant, but I would actually love to do it in the actual birth room. That would be amazing. And she asked if I would be interested in being her doula. And I went, being your what? So that was the first time I heard it was from her mouth. And I had to do some research. And at that time, I literally went straight into all this research about doulas, and I couldn't find any men. I found terminology, doudella, the doodler, and things like that to try and put us in our own little category. But it was just, I couldn't quite get a grasp on it. So I started sending out some emails to people, ones that run different doula training courses, mainly in the southeast of England. But literally, I went far as Cardiff to try and find somewhere that I could actually do this training because I was really fascinated by it all. And I eventually got in contact with Conscious Birthing,
Yes.
they were at the time were running a course just near Brighton, and it was Samsara Tanner. And
Yeah.
I spoke to her. She rang me up as soon as I sent this email. The general reply I was getting is it's all women on the course, and it's going to be very awkward to introduce a man into it. We have no sort of prejudice against men doing it, but it's just going to be very, very difficult, was the general reply that I got. But Samsara and Kate as well, they both just grabbed hold of it with both hands, and they said, "We want you there. We would love to have a man do this." And they obviously, I said, "Look, I want to. It's not a problem, but I need to know that the girls on the course, they made it very clear, it's all women." I said, "As long as they're happy for me to be there, I will do it." And it took a few days, but they got in contact with everybody, and every single one of them said they had no problem with, no issue with me being there. A couple of them, I think, had to go check with their husbands. There's a man on the course, which was quite funny. I didn't find that out until we actually done the course, and also I had to tell my husband, and he was like, there's a man doing it, what's going on? But it went really, really well. It was a lovely, and yeah, I enrolled myself on the very next course that Samsara was running, and it opened my eyes in ways that I thought I knew birth. I've got 3 sisters, and I've seen their pregnancies from being a young age, 9, 10 years old. I'm number 5 of 6 children, so I knew the birth world, and I was quite familiar, not in a sexual way, but you know what I mean, with women and their bodies.
Yeah,
I had that
yeah,
sort of,
yeah.
it wasn't something that fazed me. So going to this course and having women with their own children, there was different ages. There was some that were younger than my daughter at the time, to some that were in their early 60s. So there was a good variety of ages of women there. And I was able to really make a connection with all of them. And that really put my mind at rest, that I was going to be able to enter the birth world. That was my fear.
Absolutely.
I just thought I'm trying to do almost a role reversal, and I mean we're really simplifying it as men and women. If it was a woman coming into a man's field of something, how would I feel with a woman coming into that, especially when it's so personal? We're talking about private areas of the body, and is that going to be something I would want? So I think as a man, I needed to have the right mindset, that I'm not going in there to tell anybody what to do. I'm going in there very, very humble, just to be told from a woman's point of view how I should behave. And I think humility is a huge part of trying to be a man in the birth world. And
It's
I
interesting,
say,
isn't it? Because if you consider, firstly, women have had no problem being cared for by male obstetricians for decades and decades. So it wouldn't even cross a woman's mind to be questioning the gender, or whomever came into that space, because that's a person that is trained and has gone down that path, and that's their career choice, and that's just the person looking after you. As a body worker, because you trained to be a Bowen therapist, obviously you're very familiar and confident. I know confidence comes with time, and doing it over a longer period, obviously you'll get more and more confident. But as a body worker, again, I wouldn't have any problem going to an osteopath, a Bowen therapist, a chiropractor, anyone that was performing some sort of treatment on me, regardless of their gender. So really, it's odd that we would even question that there wouldn't be male doulas and female doulas. Now, obviously, in this day and age, some people choose not to label themselves as he, she, but I'm just saying, overall, what does it matter? So, what was the training like for you when you were discussing vaginas and, kind of all of the nitty-gritty of the physiological needs of a labouring person?
Yeah, well, thankfully, like you said, I'd studied anatomy and physiology,
Yeah.
and I knew both men and women's bodies, enough that I could put my hands on the body without actually seeing them, and be able to just touch their pelvis, their ribs, and go, oh, this is a man, this is a lady. The physiology of the skeletal system, I could tell the difference. And as we went into it, and obviously the first thing that you do, or we done, I don't know if all doula training does this, you introduce yourself and you say why you're there. And I mean, Samsara, to this day, I've got a lot to thank her for. She made us all tell our birth stories. Now, she said, I don't want you coming in here trying to make your story sound more positive. I don't want you to come in here and make it sound negative and a horror story. I just want you to tell your birth story. Now, everybody there had a baby. I hadn't. I've got no idea what it's like to be pregnant or to to give birth, so I was completely alone in this question. So the only way I could answer it was telling the story of me from a birth partner's point of view, which happened to be 20 years prior to doing that training. And I had to go back over my birth story. And it woke me up to feelings about that birth that I didn't realize that I actually had. And that was a real key moment. Me actually realizing not just that the right birth partner needed, but the partner does go through an awful lot as well. And knowing how to support the birth partner. In a doula training, we kind of go straight in and think it's all about the doula and the person having the baby.
Yes.
But it's way
It's
bigger
not.
than that. It's
No.
way bigger than that.
Yeah.
You're supporting anybody that she chooses to have there with her.
Absolutely.
And that, to me, there was so much that connected with my own life, my own birth story, that I thought, yeah, this is definitely something I need to be involved in.
Yeah.
But as far as, and this is where I'm actually thinking about it now as you're asking me, I'm thinking, I wasn't shocked or taken back or put in a position, I think, oh, what do I say? The whole thing felt so natural. Now, whether that, I do give a lot of credit to Samsara, but I also give a lot of credit to the women that were in that room with me, doing that training with me. There was no thought of me being a man, to the point we was actually doing the practical training. And, we're sitting with our hands down and I'm getting hold of sitting bones and gently pulling open the bottom of the pelvis, hip squeezing, rebozo work, tummy massage. I'm able to do that with these women without any awkward feelings. And that to me, it just really affirmed that I was making the right choices and that it's something that definitely could happen. And, it's something I want to kind of go out and scream from the rooftops. We need more men.
Yes.
We got to
and the
stop
more
thinking
men there are, the more women will see it as a normal thing to have a male doula. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, the only thing I say I've got in my kind of corner, as it were, not that there needs to be a corner, but because there is the medical side of my training as well, I think that gave, you mentioned earlier, if you went to an osteopath or a chiropractor, there's medical training. If you've got a midwife or anyone that's in the birth room as a professional, the surgeons, then you kind of go, well, they're professional and they're a man. Doulas, the first thing I think is, does that person want to be held, whether it's physically or emotionally, by a man? Now, there's lots of reasons I can think of that they definitely wouldn't. And to be able to know those reasons takes a lot of practice. You need to be very careful how you word things to make sure you don't cause more problems. I know it's something before we got on here, I have to be very careful with the words I say so I don't offend, but you don't know what's happened to that person in their history. And you can't be jumping in there going, well, you shouldn't have a prejudice because I'm a man. There could be horrific stories in their past that there's absolute reason that there definitely shouldn't be a man in that birth room. And so, yeah, every
Having
birth
said that, a client is unlikely to hire a male doula if they've got any previous sexual history issues, anything that's come up for them. They're more likely to avoid that. But at the same time, you can never say that hasn't happened. So I guess you're right.
You kind of hope that they would scroll past you so you didn't have to come across the bridge.
And I'm in a situation when I'm working with a client, if I think they need a hug, it's not always me that they want the hug from. Sometimes it is, but mostly I would be pulling the partner over and saying, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a moment here and leave them to it, because my intuition as a doula doesn't come from my, fact that I'm a woman, you have the same intuitions, you have the same instincts that will come from the role that you've been doing for years, and being able to say, okay, in my experience, this moment requires X, Y, or Z. Um,
Yeah.
so you can easily turn around at that point if you think a hug is required and say, you want me to give you a hug or do you want me to get them? you know,
Yeah.
that's
No,
perfectly
'cause
okay, isn't it?
I've been in exactly those situations. I've been doing some little hip squeezes and, just very, quite calm in the room. And I can see the partner standing there, like hands in front of him, shoulders up. Come here, come, like, get them to
Let me
tide.
show
I
you
said,
what to do. Yeah.
you see what I'm doing? Just put your hands
Yeah.
there, you know. And occasionally, I've had the moment go, like, or the birthing partner go, no, no, get off. I can. It's not right. It's not right. And then I have to carry on. And then I
Yeah.
just kind of say, go around, just sit with her. Just be there.
Yeah.
Let her
Yeah. Yeah.
see you. And like you say, it doesn't have to be me doing the physical contact.
Exactly. Yeah.
The best scenario for any doula, I think this is every doula's dream birth, is they sit in the room and don't do a thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is my dream birth scenarios. I sit over there and I just watch everything unfold and do nothing.
Absolutely. Being able to give them the confidence that that's the best possible birth for them when nobody's intervened in any way is amazing. And that's all about the birth preparation sessions, isn't it? Which I'm
I
sure
was
you're
just going to say
brilliant
that.
at as
Yes.
well. Yeah, the birth preparation sessions, when you sit down and work with a family and you talk about, how your role plays out in a birth, that's a really important message. Less is more, being, not doing, because I think
Yes.
that one of the things that is a very general thought, I wonder what your perspective on this is that typically men want to fix things. But of course, is that men, or is that the other person in the relationship who just wants to make their loved one feel better? Is there, of course there is, I know Mark Harris, the male midwife, he always talked about, the difference in the way our brains are wired. Well, of
Yes.
course, that's true. I don't dispute that. But at the same time, when you're working with a family and you are a doula in a professional, trained, experienced role, you can see things. I call it reading the room.
Yeah.
You can see things because you're not emotionally involved. You don't have
I
the
think,
same level of,
yes, you've got
relationship
it.
going on. So you're
Yes.
more than capable of switching off your Mr. Fix-It brain, I would imagine, when you're in a birth room.
And the training that you get wouldn't necessarily be, oh, I can see a problem, and you go bolting across the room and sort the problem out. Your That intuition that a man would have, and we do. We want to fix things. We want to get in there, and I mean, I remember Mark he was in an interview with, I think it was Birth Ed podcast, and he was saying that they want to read the machine and go, oh yeah, like, oh no, you're having a contraction. It's just started. They don't need to be told that. Unfortunately, that's the psyche of men. Um, but when you're trained in a birth world to be in a birth room, I still get that contraction, but I don't verbalize it. I will just rest a hand, or I'll just come so I'm just slightly envisioned. So if she needs me, I'm there, or I will kind of just touch the partner so they're aware, and or maybe even hold the partner back if they try to go and intervene. Just a gentle touch to say, just give her a minute,
Yeah.
let her get through the first 30 seconds, then we'll see how she is, do the breathing, let her hear you breathe. They're all things that the training allows you to do, but then that male intuition, I think, maybe kicks it in a different way. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've worked alongside a female doula, and you can see the dynamics are different, but the end result always seems to be fairly much the same.
Yeah, that's really interesting what's come up in my head about that, because I was thinking, I wonder, and you'll never really know, but I wonder whether the partner, if it is a male partner, if his response to the doula is different to a male doula versus a female doula. So you guiding him, he's like, okay, he knows what he's doing. Do you know what I mean? Whether they feel differently in the way that you guide them. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, we're looking at this whole massive scenario now. I mean, we can go right the way back to I've had where I've gone to meet a couple that have just found out they're pregnant, and we're talking a man and a woman, and you can tell straight away she's the one that is in charge. She's the one that is making the choices, and he just sits there going all the way through it. Whereas you get others that you'll get there and the man's going, but I think you should do this. And what about this? And like, do we really want to be at home? I don't think we should have a birth. And they're giving all of their thoughts. The dynamic between that couple will create the dynamic you're going to see in the birth room. And like you said, that preparation for the man that wants to jump in, the man that all the way through their relationship has been the one that jumps in and sorts the problem out, needs to be reined in a little bit to let her take control. This is her moment. She is in charge of this. It's her body. You need to respect that in the birth room. And
Absolutely.
that's the bit of the training that is I think the most fundamental for the male birth partner, is that they understand that they are not in that room to fix anything. That's what the doula's for. That's what the midwives and the professionals are for. They're there to support them. And how we do that support is obviously, again, it all goes back to the dynamics of that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what would you go back and say to yourself as a birth partner if you could, when you were having your little one, who's 20 something now, you said?
Yeah, she's 27 this year.
Wow.
So,
So that's a long time to go back. And I'm not saying, correct anything. I'm just saying, what would you whisper in your ear in those moments of birth, which would be helpful for listeners to hear?
yeah, this is where my birth story is a traumatic one, and it's one that I, maybe not for this podcast, maybe another podcast, I'd be happy to talk about the whole story. But we were in a hospital environment. We had induction, so it wasn't the best. Wife did have preeclampsia, and we were really suffering with a very, very high blood pressure. So this was the reason that these things snowballed on, to the point that she'd got stuck, and we had to go to emergency C-section, which thankfully I was able to stand in on. But I don't know. I think looking back, it would be pay her more attention. She's going to love that I'm saying this on here. I even though I'd seen births, I'd been with my sisters, like seeing their births and helping them. I didn't get it right. I was far from getting it right. And I think I needed to be there for her more rather than for me. The things I took along to the hospital were things to keep me entertained while she was having a baby, instead of thinking, how can I keep her calm? How can I keep the environment as conducive to a birthing environment as it should be, and yet be there as well, even in the hospital environment? And I didn't do that at all. I was terrible. I had my crossword puzzles, I had cans of drink, my packets of crisps, and all of my bits and pieces that I wanted. And then she wanted a cup of tea, and it's like, oh, I'll have to go down to the canteen and get you one. I hadn't thought about her enough. And that would be my little snippet for any birth partner, is her first, whatever you do in that birth room. So even if you need a wee, look at her. Where is she at that moment? Would I be causing disruption to whatever state of mind she's in, by quickly diving out for a wee? If you're going to disrupt her, you wait. Don't care if
Absolutely.
it almost kills
And
you.
And that's such an important thing to say because one of the things that I talk a lot about, both in the book and in the podcast, is about understanding the role of oxytocin. Now, I could be wrong, but my feeling is the majority of courses across the country definitely talk a lot about oxytocin, but they don't seem to manage to translate it in a way that birthing partners understand exactly what oxytocin does and how important it is, and how, what's the word I'm looking for? How fragile it is and how easily it can be slightly knocked out. So that doesn't mean, knocked out completely. That means knocked out to the point where labor becomes long and exhausting. Because if you've got, I always talk about it as a traffic light system where you've got high levels of oxytocin, you're going really great, everything's going great. If you've got high levels of adrenaline, you've got no labor. If you've got somewhere in between in that amber light system, you've got contractions with no progress. And this is when you're talking about that delicate point where you've got somebody who is disrupted by even their partner nipping out for a wee, because that's how fragile oxytocin can be. If she's in the zone, she's looking down, she doesn't care about you, she's really laboring hard and her contractions are coming and they're evenly spaced and the right length and progress is being made, that's fine. But if she's in that amber light zone where the slightest thing is tripping her out of consistent contractions that are keeping her in that wonderful high oxytocic state, the smallest things matter. And I don't think people realize that. Even opening your bag of crisps and eating them in the corner, being on your
Yeah,
mobile phone, any little thing that's irritating means she's in her thinking brain and she is not in the zone. And until she's in that zone, you're not safe to do anything other than keep the
and
lights out, keep the conversation low, and do nothing.
nothing. No, I was just thinking through the lockdown, the amount of people that, especially women, that are getting to a point they hate the sound of their husband chewing his food or sipping his tea, or the way he takes his socks off makes him makes her want to kill him. They're all things that create adrenaline.
Yeah,
As soon as you get a little bit wound up with someone, we've got
yeah,
adrenaline.
yeah,
And this is why I'm so glad I've done my training in the right order. Bowen therapy is all about the receptors in the body and fascia.
right.
Now, our receptors, they're all shaped. So I'm showing you on here, and obviously if you're listening on the podcast, but they've all got a shape to them. Now, oxytocin slides into that receptor so smoothly. The body doesn't even realize that it's had a big wash of oxytocin. You just feel awesome. Adrenaline, the other hand, doesn't fit into those receptors very well. It kind of wedges itself in. So anything that can go in nice and gently also comes out nice and gently. So it's very easy for the oxytocin to fall back out of that receptor, and we kind of go, we lose that feeling. But if we get the adrenaline in there, it's locked in, and it takes a lot longer to get that adrenaline back out of that receptor and
Yeah,
leave it open for oxytocin to get back in. So we can't be just looking at a moment, just because she's finishing off a contractions, we don't go, oh, right, timing, go, do you want a cup of tea, love, and go out that again, it's not just the leaving the room, it's how we leave the room, when we leave the room, what sort of noises we make, and most of the time when I enter in the birth room, my shoes come off and I'm walking around in my socks.
yeah, me
I
too.
don't want them to know where I am in the room at any point. I have nothing in my pocket that rustles. My phone is on silent. I need to be a ghost in that room, so they have got no idea where I am or what I'm doing. And if a partner can take that on, that would be something that allows that oxytocin to keep flowing, and it allows for I put it in one of my Instagram posts this morning. It allows for an efficient birth. It doesn't mean it's going to be quicker. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a difference in the outcome. It just means that the energy that she has and how those receptors are filtering through her brain are going to be working at the optimal, so we get a very good result. And the more oxytocin you've got in your body when you birth your baby, the more oxytocin that baby's got, the better the
Absolutely.
knock on the breastfeeding afterwards, the skin to skin, how the placenta empties itself afterwards, all work better if we're not, or mum isn't disrupted
Mhm.
with the wrong environment. So yeah, definitely, make sure you're the invisible partner.
Absolutely. And your behavior will show them, and they can mimic you in that way,
Yeah,
because obviously that gives them confidence to know that what you're doing is working, so they'll just follow suit, which is always really nice. And I think that helps with the midwives as well, because I always think that as doulas we often doula midwives as well as the clients that we work for. In some situations it's not necessary, but other times it can be. So I wanted to ask about what it was like when you first went into a birth as a doula. Like, what was that like for you? I mean, you said you've seen your sisters give birth, but this must have been a whole nother thing.
yeah. With my sisters, obviously, I was young. I didn't fully understand everything I was seeing. But as a doula going into a birth room, so I say birth room, any birth room is a birth room. I was mainly at the house. I got a phone call in the morning to say she was getting some very gentle contractions, and I said, "Do you know what? Go have a lovely soak, get yourself back into bed, snuggle up, put your little electric blanket on, and just conserve your energy. Just relax." I know her mum and her sister were there with her, and they were like taking turns, but they were going in the other room and leaving her quiet just so she could find her zone. But when I first turned up, she was, so this is, deep end. Uh, that's kind of where I was trying. Her mum had run a bath out for her, like I'd suggested, and this was her second bath of the day. But I turned up when she was stood by the bath, holding the rail, having a contraction, just about to get in. And mum went, "She's in the bathroom." And I walked in the bathroom, bag over my shoulder, and there's this naked lady just about to get in the bath. And I kind of went, what do I do? What do I do? And it was like every sort of fear that I had during my training, every sort of possible scenario that could come up in one go, was a woman standing with one leg over the bath, one leg on the floor, holding onto a rail, having a contraction. And it kind of woke me up very, very quickly. I'm in the middle of this. And it's a little scream inside my head, but then refocus. I literally, I went like that, flicked the light switch off, because there was a couple of little candles on the shelf above the bath. And I said, like, shut the door. I said, like, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you need to hold on to me to get into the bathroom?" "Yes, please." So I kind of put my hand on the wall, and she just lowered herself in. Um, and then I just sat on the floor next to her, and I was like, "This is so cool." I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And it was a whole rush of emotions. I know probably men, it's not something I've actually researched. I'll have to look into it. We don't have as much oxytocin flowing through us, but at that moment, I definitely did. Serotonin and oxytocin were literally oozing out of every pore. It was amazing. Yeah.
That's great. You were definitely thrown in at the deep end, but she doesn't care. When you get to that point in labour, clothes don't matter for most people, do they?
No, no.
It's no big deal whatsoever. You just do whatever you have to do. It's that kind of whole mammalian instinct that just kicks in, and who needs clothes when you're in that scenario? What a great story. I love that. What do you think your strengths are?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, I like to think I'm able to empathise. Now, um, it's something that I had someone come to me once, and it was for a completely unbirth related issue, and I could feel there was something not being said. something in the room, and I said, I'm really sorry, but I need to just ask what's happened. And it was like, sorry. I said, what's actually happened? I'm getting the physical stuff you're telling me, but I don't know what else there is. I'm picking up something, and I didn't understand at the time what it was. And there was a big problem, that we had to sit down and talk about. Before we could do any body work, you need to make sure the mind's in the right place. And what came out was quite shocking, but I've realized I've got this empath type skill
Yeah.
that I can see what's going on. I find it really hard when there's more than two other people in a birth room, because I'm reading each of them, and I love being very careful. I have done a free birth with just mum and me, and I loved it because all I had to do was let my
Tune into
mind
it.
open up and take in what she felt.
Yeah.
And to this day, that's the best birth I've ever attended. It was absolutely awesome. As soon as we put two other people in the room, I'm like this, trying to gauge between the two of them, and then we introduce a midwife, or as the NHS do, 6 midwives come into them at the same time. You kind of I can't deal with that many people, so it's a good thing in the right environment, but too many people and I kind of lose it and go very quiet and tuck myself back out the way. But empathy and the intuition that empathy brings, is, I would definitely say, it's my strongest. It outweighs any of the male stuff that would be putting me back a little bit. I think it definitely gives me a little bit of an advantage in some places.
That's amazing. What a
Empathy.
great gift. A really great gift. Um, and then I wanted to ask what your clients would say about having a male doula. What was that like for them? I mean, obviously they're not here to talk about it, but you are able to share a little bit.
So what I've actually managed to do, which it's a work in progress, is I've done a few podcasts with people, and most of them are people that I was attending their birth with them, and I think I don't always understand why I was such an important part of it. Sometimes I kind of come away from a birth, especially I had a couple that were where they were transferred to hospital, and I kind of walked away from it feeling like a bit of a failure. I thought, I've done, it's kind of my fault that we haven't, that we didn't progress. And afterwards, the love and the thanks that I get from them for being there to get them to that point where they were transferred, it's actually more than those that I've seen it through to the end. And that, to me, I still struggled to get my head around. But they say it's the kind of clarity it gives them, the confidence, and they know what's going to be said. A lot of what I talk about is what a midwife will say when she walks into the room, if we at
Yes,
the point we call them. And they said that is their biggest tool for them as the person giving birth, is knowing what to say and reply to the midwife to get the result that they want.
absolutely.
And I don't know how I do that or what it is exactly that I've done, but to have that feedback to say that they felt the
That's
midwife come in.
that's one of the most important parts of our job, I think, is that I always say even a difficult birth doesn't need to be a negative experience. And the reason for that is because obviously, if the decision making process is all held in the woman's power and her control, then she will never ever look back at her birth experience and say that was awful, because she took massive ownership of every decision made. And having a doula support you through that process, telling you what's going to happen, what's likely to happen, and how they can take ownership at any given point, means that they would have felt amazing sense of control. They would have made the decisions to do everything that happened, and therefore they will always see that as a positive experience, and obviously see you as part of that, amazing birth. And not every birth does go to plan, does it? We like to say that because statistically when you have a doula you are more likely to have the birth that you are planning, of course, but on the whole there is still always going to be the odd scenario where it doesn't go how they would have liked. And so having the flexible mindset and the knowledge and all of the preparation that you do with them will have just made that a really great positive experience. So it's been so lovely to hear all about your I've
You've
loved it.
opened up to my mind that things I'd forgotten, and things that I think are really valuable for people that are listening to really try and use. I'm always around if anybody's got messages they want to send to me, especially the men in these birth partnerships. I'm more than happy to talk about things. I don't think you should be charging for everything out there, and I think just get rid of the doubts, and I think you put those to one side, go in confident, and you're going to have a much better birth experience.
Well, my last question is, what is your top tip for any birth partner moving forward? Have you just answered it, or do you think that you've got another top tip?
The top tips is make sure that you're on the same page. You're not in charge as a birth partner. You're there to support, not to guide or direct. And make sure you're fully aware of what the birthing person wants.
Yes.
Don't try and change their plan. Like we said, going for a wee halfway through, labouring, it's a really bad thing because of oxytocin. But trying to convince them to do a different course of action, when they go, no, I don't want gas and air, and you're going, no, have it because I can see you're,
Yes.
Don't do that. Don't ever do that.
Never.
She says she doesn't want gas and air. You stick with that. You're just there to support her choices, and you should know those choices well before you go into the birth room. And this is where conversation, communication between the birth partner and the birthing person, whatever dynamics that holds, is vital. That is my absolute top, without any question. Communicate and make sure you know what page you're on.
Yes, absolutely. 100% agree with you. Thank you. Where can people find you? Where can people find you, Matt?
So I have my website, which is the main, obviously, therapy website, which is Bowen Bexley, BOWENBEXLEY.co.uk. There's ways to contact me on there if you're after any of my birth services or postnatal services. And you will come directly through to me, and I'll be more than happy to give you a call and have a chat. And obviously you've got me on Instagram and things like that, I'll be more than happy to respond to any messages through there.
And that's at the Male Doula, isn't it?
At the Male Doula with underscores between the three words.
Okay. And I will post links to that in the show notes anyway, so that people can find you. So it's been amazing. I've loved chatting to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Really, really nice. And I texted you earlier to say I just felt really nervous about this, but you've made me feel really calm and relaxed.
Thank you. Thank you so much.